Wide zone and mid zone are very similar, and in this video we're going to discuss their differences and how I'm evolving my offense in light of them, including their effect on the inside zone run game as well. Let's dive in. So this is a screenshot that I got of the Rams. This was week 11 against Philadelphia, and this is a picture of Sean McVay's call sheet caught by the broadcast. And this is where this idea really kind of started stewing for me. It was right around the end of our football season, so starting to think about changes moving forward and evolving my offense. This really got those gears turning for me, and it starts with just recognizing that even on McVay's call sheet, there is a separate section for mid zone and a separate section for wide zone. So what that tells me is it's not just jargon. There is a reason for having both. They are coached differently and there are different intents behind the play call. So now just in thinking about this system and what they call the zone run game, it's really interesting to me. 17-16 being mid zone. We know 18-19 is wide zone. 14 and 15 is inside zone. And then 11 and 10, or more often 31 and 30, being the gun versions of a maybe tight zone where we're expecting to hit the backside A gap. So those are kind of the numbers of the zone run game. And then a lot of the gap stuff falls in the 12 and 13 because you want to press the A gaps and then bounce outside. So it doesn't matter whether it's a traditional off tackle like power or counter, or if you're running something interior like trap. Any gap scheme, including duo, like we can see up here at the top, is going to fall under that 12-13 number. But what really stuck out to me on this play call sheet is the numbers themselves, specifically the order that they're in. Now, a while back, I did a video breaking down the Shanahan playbook, and one of the things we talked about in that video was that the order of these numbers matters. 17-16 and 18-19. It matters when the odd number is on the left, and it matters when the even number is on the left. The number on the left is actually the play call when the formation is on the right. So if we're putting a whole play call together here, we've got pistol, trips, edge, Zach. Now, which direction is the trips edge formation? McVay doesn't put it on his sheet, as we can see here. And from what I've seen from Shanahan's sheets, this is a pretty common practice in this system. They just understand that if I want to run this play call on the left, then the formation has to be to the right. And if I want to run the play call on the right, then the formation has to be to the left. I don't prefer it that way, but that's how they work it. So if they wanted to run the 17 version of this, which would go to the left, it would be pistol, trips, right edge, Zach, 17 Wanda wraps. Now, which way does 17 go? To the left. So where formation is to the right, play is to the left. Now, down here, this bottom one is the easiest to make out. So now down towards the bottom with wide zone, the bottom call down here is really the easiest one to make out. But again, the even number is the one on the left. So we've got pistol, south right clamper, F sly, 18 fraud sift. And they've got a can, an audible to it later on. That's not exactly what we're getting at here. What really sticks out to me about this is if you look down through the line, all of these are 17-16. And if we look here, at least the two that the numbers are pretty visible, those are both 18 and 19. So what that tells me is that Sean McVay prefers to run mid-zone to the weak side. Again, weak runs are going to be the ones that have the odd numbers first because the formation is assumed to be on the right side with the play call. So odd numbers are going to the left. If the strength of the formation is to the right, then 17-16 would be a weak side run. Same thing with 18-19. If the left number is the one that is called when the formation is on the right, then 18-19 would be a strong side run, whereas 19-18 would be a weak side run. So again, if all of these are 17-16, then this tells me that they are running mid-zone to the weak side. And if the two that we can make out here, they're 18 and 19, that tells me they're running wide zone to the strong side. So I want to keep those things in mind from a schematic standpoint, that mid zone is preferable weak, wide zone is preferable strong. And now we'll take just a quick glance at some of the different techniques between the two. So I think the differences in technique between wide zone and mid zone are pretty well shown against a basic 4-2. For the longest time, wide zone has been a very covered, uncovered, centered play. So the Y here has somebody in his gap. He's covered. The play side tackle here does not have somebody in his gap, so he is filling his gap. He's got 3 steps to decide, am I going to take over this defensive lineman, or am I going to knock him over in pursuit to the inside linebacker? The guard here would be solo on the 3. The center is technically uncovered, but he has a job that kind of goes above that, in that he needs to make sure that the nose actually gets cut off. That as a last resort, we at least have the play side A gap that can be that open alley for the running back. So instead of reaching for the 3 technique, he's going to make sure we get this backside 1 cut off on the way to the Mike linebacker. So they're going to combo him, and since it's an even box, the backside tackle can stay locked on the defensive end. The biggest part that I want to hit home here, though, is for a play side uncovered offensive lineman, which is the tackle here. He has that 3-step decision because that's what's different with mid-zone. Now again, mid-zone is a weak side preferable play, so I do want to just draw up wide zone here to the left to the weak side so we can really see the difference there. So now the play side tackle is covered, so he's going to be combo on the defensive end. The play side guard is uncovered, so he is also going to be comboing the defensive end to the inside linebacker. He has that same 3-step decision. Can I take over or can I not? He has that same 3-step decision, and now the center is solo on the nose. We're going to get a backside guard and tackle combo on the 3, and now the tight end would be solo on the backside defensive lineman. So this would be 19. We're running wide zone here. What's different with mid zone is really the technique of the play side uncovered offensive lineman. The way that the Rams run mid zone that I've seen on film, especially to the weak side here, is instead of having this double combo, play side guard tackle combo to the inside linebacker, the tackle is going to base block this defensive end. He's going to turn him out. He's going to get both hands on him, a hand on each chest plate, and torque him and turn him out. This ball has 0 chance of getting outside of the play side tackle. Now, the guard is going to basically do what the center did when we ran wide zone to the strong side. He's going to make sure that this nose gets blocked by the center, that the center can get to him, and he's going to have eyes on the play side inside linebacker. There's a lot more focus on staying on the line of scrimmage, not piercing the line of scrimmage on your 3rd step like you do a traditional wide zone blocking scheme. So the way that I see it play out on film a lot here is for the Rams, the guard is going to do what I call leaving a hand. He's going to post up this nose with his right hand until the center can take all of him. At that point, find the play side linebacker wherever he is, and now he has him. Remember, the tackle is just man blocking this defensive end and throwing him out, opening the B gap as wide as he can. The guard's job is to make sure that the nose doesn't make it to the B gap, and then to block whoever's in the B gap after that. Now, thinking about applying this to the high school level, I'm definitely not teaching different techniques for a perimeter focused zone play, but I also don't actually teach either of those offensive line techniques. I don't teach the 3-step timing for wide zone, and I don't teach what is essentially blocking back on mid zone. I use the techniques that Coach Jim McNally actually calls mid zone techniques. I use them for wide zone as well, just kind of a good catch-all. I think you can do both runs wide and mid zone with those techniques. Now, he's a legendary offensive line coach in the NFL, and he's learned these techniques from other offensive line coaches as well. Scott Peters, who learned under Bill Callahan when Cleveland and Nick Chubb was running all over the league. John Strollo has also been a pioneer. He's a college offensive line coach, but he's really pushed these techniques forward. And Coach Jim McNally, he's really kind of the one who's just put everything together and packaged it together and put it out for us on Twitter. So definitely go check out his Twitter profile for more. Now, I want to go back to what I mentioned earlier when we were looking at the play call sheet at what really stuck out to me, this idea of wide zone strong and mid zone weak. Now, if I'm running wide zone strong here, running 18 with the techniques that I've talked about and how I block it up, I'm going to have the tight end solo on the wheel right here, and we're going to combo the 3 up to the jack because I want to be really thick on that 3 technique, and we're going to expect this ball to at least hit the C gap. Same things backside, hitting that nose really thick, getting up to the mic, and then base blocking the backside defensive end. So here, when we're running strong, we're assuming an even box, and the center is going to have the backside inside linebacker. Because we're running to a strong side with the tight end, we have that extra blocker to help even out the surface to allow the center to stay backside. We have that extra body who's going to allow us to go 3 for 3, tight end, tackle, and guard for the end, the tackle, and the inside linebacker all to the play side. Now, when we run weak, we don't have that. So the center has to work to the play side inside linebacker. With this front, this would be more of what Coach McNally calls the deep shuffle for the guard, reading the mic. Tackle's going to hook the end, center's going to reach the nose, and the guard here is really going to fit based off what the mic does. Backside, we're still comboing the 3 to the inside linebacker, and the tight end would be based on the wheel here. But the idea here is the center is working to the front side. So the first difference for me between the two moving forward in my offense is going to be wide zone is going to have the center working to the backside inside linebacker. Mid zone is going to have him work to the play side inside linebacker. What that's going to allow me to provide for my offensive line is easier communication. A few months ago, I put out a video on my mic ID system, and the way that it starts is always IDing the point man as the second inside linebacker in the box, the play side. Everything we did, especially in the zone run game, was going to be based off of him, but against this front, the center would need to push it. He was supposed to get a deep call from the guard. Deep call from the guard would tell him to push because now the tackle and the guard have to combo to the jack instead, whereas if we were running to the strong side, he wouldn't get a deep call from the guard because this would be a chip double, so we could stay backside. That tells the backside tackle he's locked on the backside defensive end. And while logically it makes sense, it forced a lot of unnecessary communication for my offensive line. And what I'm really trying to do for my offensive line moving forward is take that burden of communication off of them. Yes, they're going to have to communicate, but maybe they don't have to communicate as much. So now we can call wide zone right. The center knows he's working. His combo is working to the backside inside linebacker, and we're going to be able to recognize this front and block it up correctly. Now let's take a look at how this would work versus an underfront. So it's easy, 4-2 box. We've got 6, they've got 6, hats for hats. Really easy to draw things up against. But now we're short a man. If I wanted to run wide zone to the strong side here, my center is still working to the backside inside linebacker. With the nose in his gap, the guard and the center are going to work to the jack. We're still going to be locked on backside, but we have to fan out the front side. So if I wanted to run wide zone to the strong side, then I would need an F in the backfield here to isolate the Mike linebacker. But the thing is, my offensive line doesn't have to know that. But what this is going to do is it's going to allow my offensive line to play faster, and it's on me to make sure that I have the right formation, I have the right motion, I get us into the right look to make sure that we have a hat for a hat in the box. It's not the offensive line's job to figure it out. It's my job to figure it out. I'm taking the thinking away from 16, 17, 18-year-olds and putting it on me. Now let's say for some reason we don't have a fullback, so we can't run that. Well, now instead of running wide zone, I can just run mid zone because that's going to put the center's combination to the play side inside linebacker. So now we're still fanning out the front side, tackle and tight end. But because it's mid zone, everybody knows the center is working to the play side inside linebacker instead of the backside, which means the backside of the offensive line has to take care of the backside linebacker. And now if we want to bring the running back to sidecar, we could read the backside will, we could boot to control him, or maybe we do have that fullback. And this is how we can get to split zone, how we can get to 18 sift off of a perimeter zone presentation from the backfield, where the running back is getting his 5 steps and making his decision. So that's the difference for the offensive line. For the offensive line, everybody knows for wide zone, center's working backside. mid-zone, centers working play side. This is also going to have an effect on the backfield. RPOs are everywhere across the football landscape, but oftentimes they can seem complicated and too difficult to execute at the high school level. If you're interested in running RPOs, but you feel like a lot of what you see is too complicated and difficult for a high schooler to execute, then check out my free clinic, link in the description below. I'm going to take you through my strategy and philosophies and schemes for keeping RPOs simple and effective at the high school level. And better yet, it doesn't matter what offense you run. These strategies can be applied anywhere from the spread to the single wing. Again, it is totally free. It's on Coaching Share. The link is in the description below. You don't want to miss it. Now, I'm not changing aiming points or anything for the running back as of right now. Just going to be changing his reads. Now, the thought with wide zone has always been we're going to read the first defender who's got his hand in the dirt. Let's just say that's the will right here, and we're essentially reading a defender at a time outside in from there, waiting on the first guy to win a gap. That's a very watered down version of it, but that's not how I've coached my running backs anyway. What this change is going to allow us to do is to really narrow down the running back's reads. So again, let's take this 4-2 picture here, how I'm going to be blocking up wide zone. We're going to chip this 3, be really heavy on him, and really try and make sure that the 3 and the jack, that nobody makes it outside the C gap. Then we're 3 for 3 on the backside. And so essentially, if this is where we talk about with wide zone, creating a wall to create an alley for the defense, if our wall is the C gap here and we're pressing, the tight end area with the running back, essentially, I just need him to read this block. I need him to know on his 5th step, are we bouncing it outside or are we banging it inside? It's on the offensive line to make sure that nobody gets across that C gap area. So with wide zone, the running back is going to have the option to bounce or bang. We're going to read this block on the end man of the line of scrimmage. It might be a tight end. It could also be maybe a fullback reaching this will from the backfield. We're going to read whatever that block is, and on the 5th step, we're going to either bounce or we're going to bang. That's it. One decision, one cut, stick a foot in the ground and go. Now let's take a look at mid zone. So we're comboing up to the inside linebackers, basing on the backside. We know because it's mid zone, because we are trying to reach defenders that we do not have good leverage on, that this ball is not going to make it all the way outside. We need to make it look like it's going to go to the outside so that we can still get the flow of the defenders, but we know that it's not actually going to get out there. So with wide zone, he had the option to bounce or bang. With mid zone, I'm going to give him the option to bang or bend. If we get that mid zone call, we know we are not getting outside the block of that defensive end. Instead, we're going to get our eyes on the first defensive lineman on or play side of the center. And here that would be the one technique, and we're going to read how he gets blocked. We can either on our 5th step bang because he gets sealed off, or maybe he doesn't, and we're going to bend it all the way back. Still going to take the same angle, that C gap tight end area, ghost tight end area, because we want that reaction from the defense. Still going to cut on our 5th step, but we're going to take the read away. Not going to expect him to get all the way outside in on a mid-zone call, because with mid-zone, we know we're not getting all the way out there. And this idea is really prevalent against the odd front. So remember, against the odd front here, this could be a 4 or a 4-eye, really. We have to fan out the play side tackle and the play side guard. There is no way that we're going to have 2 solo blocks on the play side edge and expect to get out. So now the center, again, he's working to the play side linebacker, but we're going to get help here from the backside guard. So the running back is still going to take his 5 steps, but he's reading the first man on or play side of the center. So does the guard get him all the way reached when the center leaves to go get the jack? If he does, then we're going to hit that A gap that has moved at that point. If he doesn't have him reached, then we're going to get all the way behind him and get as much as we can. Now thinking about how this is going to affect our inside zone running game, this for me is also going to give me a differentiator between inside and tight zone. And that is where we're going to change up the backfield action. So for our interior zones, whether it's inside, whether it's tight, we're going to open on the first step, cross over on the second step, And then when that third step hits the ground, our shoulders should be square to the line of scrimmage. So now our shoulders, instead of facing a tight end, should be really right about behind the guard right here if we're in the pistol. And then essentially inside zone is going to pair with wide zone. So inside zone would have the center working to the backside linebacker. We would be double up to the mic, and the tight end would be solo on the Sam, but instead of pressing the C gap, we're just getting downhill a lot earlier. And for tight zone, that would be when the center is working to the play side inside linebacker. But again, same footwork from the backfield. Open step, crossover, plant and roll downhill. So now we're in just a little bit better of a position to cut back, especially compared to mid zone. Now, would we carry every single one of those variations into a game or even into a season? Really just depends on what we think our offense is going to be. Are we going to have more gap schemes this year if that fits our team better? Or are we going to be a good zone running team? Is really just going to depend on how into the weeds we're going to get as far as differentiating the zone game. But that's the beauty of having a system. I kind of think of the system as this is my library of books that I can pull from, of things that I can pull from for my playbook for this year. Now, if you differentiate these different variations of zone runs in your offense, let me know what your criteria for each of them are down in the comments below. And I talked a lot about wide zone and mid zone blocking technique. If you want to go more in depth as to how I'm coaching the technique behind those blocking schemes, click on the screen and watch this next video.